Hey guys, and welcome back to another tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to use your tracing paper that you received in your supplies packet to trace your image that you initially drew for your giant playing card and to transfer it onto the other side or the opposite side of your card. Now the reason why we're using tracing paper is because it's really great, especially if you did a really detailed drawing first of all. You don't want to have to try and redraw that here on the opposite side. And of course it's a playing card, so both of the images should look perfect. They should look exactly the same. So if you use tracing paper, that's going to really help with that. You don't have to try and redraw it all by hand and try and get it super duper perfect, and it will be symmetrical. Now, if you received your supplies packet, you did receive a piece of tracing paper. As you can see, I kind of ripped mine a little bit, so I'm not using the whole piece of tracing paper. You may want to use this for other projects now that you'll know how to use it, or you may just want to use it on your own for your own personal drawings, and that's fine. So what I do is I always make sure that I kind of cut it down or just rip it down to size to match whatever my drawing is. For my giant playing card, I already initially drew my character, and I've used the tracing paper, you can see, to go over it and to pretty much just trace over all of the lines. Just to save time in the video, I already traced most of the lines, but I did leave a couple lines untraced just so you can see what that process looks like. When you're using tracing paper, I would also strongly suggest that you use a piece of Scotch tape. I don't know if you can really see it, but it's right here, so that way if I move my paper up, it's still sticking. And you want to make sure that if you're not using tape because you don't have it handy, that you're just making sure you're not moving your tracing paper around as you're tracing your image, right? Because if your paper tends to move off just a little bit, your drawing is going to be off. So what's really important when you're using tracing paper is to make sure that it stays all in one place while you draw or while you trace your entire drawing. And then you can use it on the opposite side when you're going back and using that transfer method. So when you have the tracing paper on top of your image, you're just going to lay it down, and I already went through my image with pen, so it's really easy to see where all of the lines are, and I'm just going to go and trace out all of the missing lines that I have from my tracing paper. You really want to make sure you are going nice and slow, getting all of those lines exactly the same, because you want your image to look exactly the same on the opposite side, right? So if we don't trace those lines exactly, it's going to come off a little off, right? So I have now completed my entire character or my entire drawing. You can tell that I didn't use or I didn't go over the lines on the edge of the paper, and that's because this is going to be lined up with the other edge, so I will know where to put my paper. But for right now, I'm going to take it off of my page, and you just want to be careful if you're using tape that you don't want to rip your paper. So nice and easy, there we go. And now I have my drawing already there on my tracing paper. So what I'm going to do is, my drawing was on this side, so I'm actually going to flip my paper over to the opposite side, and you can tell if I put it in the light, there's no drawing on this side, so it's the side that you didn't draw on, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to just kind of scribble over all of my lines here. So I'm going to take my pencil and just scribble over all of those lines. Basically what we're doing for this step is we're just making sure that there's graphite on the back edge of this paper. That way when we go to transfer it, when we redraw our image, everything will kind of just transfer over onto that piece of paper. So I'm going through and making sure that I get graphite on all of the lines that I drew. If you miss some of the lines going over and doing this step, then you're going to miss some of the lines when you transfer your drawing, and you really don't want that. So on this step, you just want to make sure that you're really going through and covering all of those lines with graphite. You may need to go back and sharpen your pencil again after this. And there we go. And I think I pretty much have everything here. Okay, so I still have my drawing on one side, and I have my pencil on the other side. So what I'm gonna do is I have my card facing up like this, and I am just going to rotate my card to the opposite side. Okay, now if we're looking on this side, Santa is to the left of the paper, and so is my K and my heart. So when I flip this over, I'm gonna make sure that I draw my Santa again right here on the left side, and I'm gonna draw my K and my heart also on this side. So what I wanna do is I kind of drew a very light line dividing my large rectangle in half. So I'm gonna put my Santa and just about right here, line him up exactly where I want him to go. And I'll know exactly where the edge of the paper is because that will be where my edge of his sweater was and also the edge of his Santa hat. And I want to make sure I put my drawing or my transfer paper drawing side up. And now I'm going to go and I'm just going to draw over all of those lines again, making sure that I am going right on the line. And when I'm pushing down on this image here, it's going to transfer or push down the graphite on the back of my tracing paper into my paper here. So if I lift my paper up, you can see that I'm starting to see the lines for where I traced. So I'm going to go through and do my entire image again, tracing over all of the lines until I see my entire image. Now, I probably won't do that step on camera. I'll probably just show you guys after the fact what it looks like after I've transferred it all. Maybe I'll take a picture of it. But you should be making sure that on this step you are following all of the lines that you drew. Okay, making sure that you're staying with the lines. Don't go outside of the line. Take your time when you're doing it. You want to make sure that you have a really nice transfer. And also keep in mind that when you're transferring the graphite, it's not going to be as dark as when you're drawing it on your paper here. So you may have to go back in afterward. If I flip my paper up, I may have to go back in and just kind of darken those lines a little bit. But I'll know exactly where those lines are to match my first initial image. So I'm just going to trace a little bit more so you guys can see. And you can actually use, if you have extra tracing paper left after your drawing, I would suggest to also use the tracing paper to draw your letter. So my letter here that I initially drew is very detailed, it's very interesting, and I want to make sure I get that same exact letter drawn that same exact way on the opposite side. So I may use a little bit of tracing paper to actually redraw my K here. And remember, the letter that you do choose to put on your card, make it go with the theme of your card or the theme of your character, okay? So you can see I did a very ornate looking king, and I even colored it in kind of, I was trying to do more of like a peppermint or a candy cane stripe on it. So make it interesting, make it fun, make it relate to your character, right? That's what's gonna make your card really cool looking and very unique and individual. All right, so when you're done transferring your whole image and tracing over the whole thing, you'll see that you have your image here at the bottom, and then you can go through, draw it in a little darker, or go over it in pen like I did. Kind of gives it a nice look when it's got that black outline to it. And then once you're done, go ahead and figure out what you want to do for your background or your pattern in your background. And that is how you use the tracing paper.